Charles, thank you for accommodating this slightly later schedule and welcome to a remote broadcast not in my car today. How are you, Charles?
It's great to be with you, Jason, and not a problem. I was out last night at the tennis section dinner of the Penang Sports Club. The Penang Sports Club has 400 members in the tennis section. We had a nice dinner and good laugh and stuff. It was fun to meet a whole bunch of people. And today's the day to write. So all is
Excellent.
good.
Yeah, I think people are jealous of your thrilling life there in the wild world of Penang, Charles. It's quite exciting. So here's your sports club.
Yeah, it's really very, very nice. I think it's about 16 acres in the center of Penang. It's obviously
Wow.
idyllic yeah. And it has 17 tennis courts, a bunch of grass courts, and the other are kind of like synthetic, kind of like grass. The advantage being that when it rains, they clean off quickly.
Snooker.
And billiards, you got a karaoke room, you got all kinds of restaurants, and most people work. So it's kind of nice to not work and be hanging around a place like that, and it's wonderful. It's great. And then I'm going through boxes and boxes, and I found this, which is a pristine copy of the 1966 AT&T annual report. It's really in very good shape. And the reason I have it is that this picture here, one of the guys there is my father on the inside front cover, and he was on the team that did the first integrated circuit, which is pictured there in the background.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and I have actually the original pictures on my wall.
Whoa.
Can't see them. Yeah.
Charles, in the last years of his life, did your father stay abreast of developments in artificial intelligence and stuff like that? Maybe not.
Very much so. Not only that, I still
Wow.
have his books. Yeah, the way he worked, he had, I think, about 20 patents. And the way he would work is he had a Bell Laboratories special book, numbered pages, where he would write down, if he had any ideas that he thought were patentable, he would write them down in that book. And he did that until the last months of his life. He would always be musing about various ideas. And some of them were pretty wacky. At one point, I came into the living room and he said, "Charles, I've got a great idea. It works perfectly. It has to do with putting mirrors up on planets, and you'll get unlimited amounts of energy from the sun and this and that. The only problem is it only works in an alternative universe."
Oh,
So,
well, that's only a small problem. Alternative universe. What?
I know. I mean, how you get to that place of realizing that it does work, but only in another universe. I mean, must have been an interesting thought exercise. But
Indeed. So, Charles, a lot of people saw earlier today, I was in Washington, D.C. I came here to attend this hearing about the JFK disclosures, but they canceled it at the last minute. That's a little strange to me. I mean, Congress basically does nothing, so I don't know what they got busy with canceling it, but that's quite annoying. It costs a lot of money and everything. We didn't get to see it. But the other thing that happened is the psychopath who's been suing me for 8.5 years has withdrawn the lawsuit. So it's possible that this hearing that conflicts with the JFK hearing will be canceled. We'll have to see. But I might be back for JFK. After all, we've got a lot to discuss today, Charles. People have been going absolutely up the wall with this whole Signal fiasco. I have mentioned to many people for a very long time, I hate these encrypted apps. I don't ever want to use them, in my opinion. Obviously, these people are in the intelligence world. They have a whole different set of circumstances. But anybody who has ever asked me to communicate with them on Signal has made me very suspicious, not only for that ask, but for other things that they've done. And I just caution people that I think these apps are utilized by many people to entrap others into saying things that they otherwise might not, thinking that it's safe and secure. That's not really the case of what's going on here. Why don't you fill everybody in? I think people want to hear your opinion of Signalgate, Charles.
Thanks, Jason. My view is that anything coming out of the Atlantic is deeply suspicious. The Atlantic has many, many, quote, former members of the CIA involved with it. Mike Waltz is suspicious given his wife, who was a hard left activist. And I think we were talking on the phone, not on Signal. And I mentioned that it's one thing to be in a private business as a conservative with a leftist wife. That happens all the time. It's another thing to be working for the MAGA movement and Donald Trump in a high position. Remember, it was desperately important to, in theory, dirty up Flynn, get him out of there. So now you've got in Waltz somebody who's married, and he's the national security advisor. I mean, apparently there are a lot of people working for him. Why he would put in a deputy who's a Covington Burling person, and Laura has the receipts on that deputy's wife, hard left Obama appointee, clerk for Sotomayor in the Supreme Court, Chinese, both of them. So this is a deeply suspicious exercise. It was set up. It reminds me of the Peter Smith ploy, where when I first met you, I get a phone call on air from was he Wall Street Journal then, or what? I forget if it was Washington Post or Wall Street Journal, and he's a nasty turd. Who I nearly didn't pick up the phone. We were literally on air, but it was persistent, and I said,
No, Charles, it was right before we went live, is what it was.
Right. Okay.
I don't have it
right.
recorded.
Oh, okay. So right before we went, but it was very persistent. It said Wall Street Journal on the caller ID. So I pick it up, and this asshole, proceeds to insult me in the first sentence of his discussion, and he wanted comment on a story that he was going to run. He ran it like 5 minutes later, so he clearly wasn't going to incorporate any comments. He just wanted to tick a box that said I reached out to somebody at the target of the interview. And instantly, this Wall Street Journal reporter had probably already been booked to go on Rachel Madcow.
Right.
And he's on it that night. And similarly, they knew that the Senate Intelligence Committee was going to meet. That was known for a long time. They wanted to have talking points to bash the incoming Trump administration. So they do this op with this Goldberg, who is, it'd be one thing if you're talking about Seymour Hersh, but you're talking about somebody in Goldberg who has gotten so many stories wrong, badly wrong, in service to the deep state. He's one of these reporters who doesn't understand that the story is more important than the reporter. That your job is to actually sort of be invisible. Kind of like in a good charity donation, the donor's name shouldn't come up. Similarly, in good journalism, it's not about the journalist; it's about the story, in my view. And this asshole is a slave to the inside game, the deep state, Washington D.C. And now it turns out Hegseth has a great tweet just out. He's, I think, somewhere in Guam or I don't know where out there, and he basically points out that the second drop of Signalgate proves that there was no classified information and there was no war plan, because he's seen war plans prior to being Secretary of Defense and now being Secretary of Defense. I would guess war plans are very, very detailed and specific, not this general crap that Goldberg put out there. So how did Goldberg get booked all over the place on TV?
Before we even go there, Charles, sorry, let me just, first of all, you've just dropped something on us that you've never, ever said before. Even though I was sitting right there, right next to you, I didn't know that the caller ID showed up saying Wall Street Journal. I just thought,
right.
See, my recollection of the incident was that I was messing around with the cameras and that you got the call before we were ready. And I was kind of relieved by that because I remember, this important guy that I don't know now has a phone call happening, so he's not going to be getting angry that I'm not ready with the cameras yet. But the fact that it said Wall Street Journal, that was a lure to get you to answer. He didn't call from his cell phone. He called from a phone that he knew would show up saying Wall Street Journal so that you would answer. He was social engineering you on the phone. And I hadn't seen Laura's tweet here that you've got until right now. But it was obvious to me that this was a setup and that either somebody close to Waltz or Waltz himself must have done this, because I don't know if you saw the Laura Ingraham interview where Waltz explained that he thought he was adding somebody else. And I forget exactly what he said, but it was like somebody tricked him into adding this guy.
That's
Goldberg.
not great.
And to me, that's espionage.
But that's not great that our national security advisor could be tricked. But I think all of this it's kind of like in seventh grade, the cute girl from fourth grade sort of morphs into a not so cute girl in seventh grade, but she demands the same level of attention she had in fourth grade. I mean, that's what the mainstream media is doing now. I mean, the mainstream media is fucking irrelevant. Nobody cares about Joe Scarborough and all these talking heads on Sunday, including on Fox, sad to say. Nobody cares anymore. And nobody cares what's in the New York Times. Everybody understands it's bullshit. And the polling, we could go on and on and on about this criticism and that potential problem in Signalgate, but the polling is remarkable for Trump and for Musk. It's remarkable. It's in the stratosphere, positive. It's remarkable. The polling is overwhelmingly in favor of impeaching Boasberg. Average human beings have had enough of this shit. And I think, it's one thing to kind of suspect the government's rotten to the core. It's another thing to appreciate that through Doge, somebody pointed out, I think on my X or Twitter feed, whatever you want to call it, that for a given government job, if the government were doing this podcast, you'd have 25 people, right? 5 of whom would be the DEI evaluation team. And one person, namely you, would be doing the work in the room there. And maybe they'd have a contingent fly out to Malaysia to just spend a month here setting up for this interview, and then on top of all that, the people who are actually collecting, and then you have another 20 at home, collecting a paycheck for not working, and then the critical effort that's undertaken in the government version of this podcast would be subcontracted to you, and they'd pay you twice as much as you might make if you were doing it in a normal job. That's what our government is all about. The magnitude of waste. When Musk, I was kind of musing back in the pre-election that if Musk could do what he did with Twitter to make it X, to the government, I thought that would be fantastic, but probably it's a Herculean task and he won't be able to do it. Now we see it's child's play. It is. I really do think the proper move here is to go back, look at the Constitution and say, yeah, that district court, we'll start by eliminating the DC court, the DC appeals court, and then all other district courts gone.
But what do you mean? What happens when somebody gets sued? How do you go to court?
They were no district courts. They were created, they were created by Congress. It's not, it was the idea was, we weren't supposed to have, America wasn't supposed to be a country of lawyers.
Yeah.
Right? The idea
that's a problem for sure.
And actually in England at the time, I'm aware of this through my personal research, in England, in order to conduct business in a city, you had to be what's called a freeman. And a freeman was somebody whose father was a freeman or who had served an apprenticeship and learned the tools of the trade. And one of the things you had, and one of the things you had to agree to do as a freeman is you would not sue any other freeman. You would stop short of that remedy and you'd resolve your differences amicably. And back in the day, you could not conduct business inside these cities unless you were a freeman.
So nobody was sued. How did they settle things? Duels?
Well, I don't know, but it was, you wouldn't, there wasn't any lawfare is my point. And now what we've got done is by allowing universities to have profit centers in their law schools, right, which are they used to be profit centers, I don't know if they still are, we've created this society and a situation in government. I know this from somebody who was deputy to Bolton and was meeting at the White House a long time ago. Every meeting, there were more lawyers than principals in the meeting. And you have to check every aspect of what you were doing, about every statute, every regulation, every issue. And that is not the way to run a government. I don't think All governments are run that way, and certainly this might explain why our record, or the American government under both parties, is so abysmally poor, particularly when it comes to foreign policy. So this is another gasp. They thought they had a gotcha moment. Dime store Obama, Hakeem Jeffries is out there with the talking point, Hegseth must go. Pete Buttigieg, back from the ma paternity leave, is saying that, well, if he had done this, he'd be fired. No, Pete, you would have been fired for a lot of other reasons because you're hopeless.
But he didn't get fired, and he did a lot of stupid things.
And nor did Joe. I mean, he agreed. All these people who are saying, oh, this is preposterous under Trump, all these people covered up for at least 4 years that Joe Biden was dumber than Mr. Potato Head. I mean, he was out of it. And they had a 4-year period where AutoPen and chiefs of staff and faceless bureaucrats and faceless appointees were handing out contracts and no-bid contracts and other sweetheart deals to the donor class and getting their kickbacks from it eventually. I mean, they had 4 years of plunder. And compared to that, remember back in the day under Biden, the one set of coordinated talking points is we can't solve the immigration crisis without comprehensive immigration reform, which means amnesty for existing illegals and all these points that Republicans and conservatives would never agree to.
Yeah.
Trump comes in, no legislation, executive orders, and the immigration flood has turned to a trickle, and we're getting rid of the worst of the worst. Damn Boasberg and others. I know the appeals court did not side with Trump on the deportation case, but I think that doesn't really matter. I think Trump's just going to go ahead and say, I'm going to keep doing what I was told to do in the Constitution, and judges can rule what they want to do on this one, but we're going to take this right up to the Supreme Court. And they're going to win in the Supreme Court.
I hope
even
that's
though
true,
Roberts,
Charles.
Because the polling is so powerful. If the
But
polling
the
were
Supreme
Trump,
Court doesn't have to kowtow to polls. They can do whatever they want, just like these district court judges.
I think they do think about polls. I mean, they're not the Supreme Court. The real problem with the Supreme Court is the clerks, and the clerks are basically hard. All of them are hard left, even the ones who are working for supposedly conservative judges. They have one hook or another into the clerks, and it's the clerks who can mess around. But I think the Supreme Court is mindful, and Roberts is mindful of the mood of the public.
But
and
why?
Why
would they care? They don't have to get reelected. I think unless your bottom line is linked to that, they could say they care, but
they care. I think.
Charles, the one issue I have is that everybody in Congress right now who's sort of zeroing in on this problem is focusing on impeaching these judges. And the way it's set up right now, it's sort of virtually impossible. And I mean, what I did today, you and I have spoken about it a little bit, but I was walking around Congress handing out this draft proposal for a Judicial Accountability Act. And this would apply to all judges, including the Supreme Court. And I mean, this isn't inventing something new. The whole purpose of this is to establish a framework for the enforcement of the Constitution's Article 3 Good Behavior Clause. This is in the Constitution, and the judicial branch has just convinced everybody to forget about it and has granted themselves all this immunity and authority and all that. There should be a process for removing judges, be they district court or Supreme Court. There needs to be a process for removing judges who don't meet that good behavior criteria. It's too difficult.
Right. Yeah. And we've been all markets, and this is a market for influence and power. All markets go through swings. And we are now in a swing where lawyers have too much power. It's unquestioned. There's no downside, no serious I mean, look at Weissman and Eisen as two examples, and Hillary and Bill, right? And Michelle and Barack. Look at how much all those people have abused the law. In the case of the former presidents, look how rich, and they're all celebrities now, rich beyond measure, telling us we've got to live in a 250 square foot ridiculous 15-minute city apartment, while they have multiple mansions, fly private, go on expensive vacations, get book deals that they produce. Somebody writes a book, they pay the ghost $200,000, they collect $10 million, and get the books get promoted on high carbon footprint book tours around the world. Nobody really understands who buys these books or how they price the books, and this is just blatant corruption. And the magnet for corruption is the swamp in Washington D.C. and the environs around it. Those are the richest districts in America, and the salary levels are just preposterously high now. I mean, I saw that somebody posted the salaries, for example, for the Kennedy Center. I was amazed that the CEO of the Kennedy Center made $1.3 million. That's a government
just
salary.
A theater? What are they doing there?
I know. It should all be free. You should be doing that. You should volunteer.
I mean 100, 200,000. You're living in Washington, D.C.
No.
Right.
I'm sorry. It's public service. This is not. First of all, I could question why is the government operating a theater?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right.
To begin with, but if we're going to go, and there are many people who, if it were truly an honor, the person people took seriously, who would love. I know Clarissa, when she was alive, volunteered at the New York Philharmonic. I mean, it's plenty of people who are interested in the arts.
Q-Tip is part of it. He left his wallet in El Segundo. That's weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's just look. I think the American arts scene does have a lot of very talented people in it. Unfortunately, most of them are not calling the shots, and you have these grifters, grifter celebrities who decide the second they're famous because they can play the piano or sing, suddenly their political opinions matter a lot. I mean, Robert De Niro is an idiot when it comes to politics, and basically his latest movie bombed
Epic
as it should have bombed. Alto something or other.
Yeah, I don't know the name of it, but I saw a scene from it, and they're making it like, The Nutty Professor, where Robert De Niro plays like several mobsters who are talking to each other in a scene. And I was thinking, you know what? This was intriguing in 1989 when Back to the Future did it, and it was an interesting part of the story when they did a movie about the Cray brothers, but it just seems gratuitous and a special effects waste of time with Robert De Niro. It becomes more technical, the acting, than actual, I don't know. The idea seemed terrible to me.
Right, and think about it. De Niro, Obama, Hillary, Bill, they were all out promoting the idea that Hee Haw Harris would be a sensible CEO and Tampon Tim a deputy to try to confront the dangers Trump is now confronting with the first-class administration. They seriously, they're that dumb. They invested too much political capital in the case of Obama, promoting the idea that Kamala Harris, as J.D. Vance said, was asked, what's the difference between you and something to the effect, what's the difference between you and Hee Haw? And he said, I don't have 4 vodkas before my breakfast. Something like that. And I mean, she's an idiot, as is Crockett, as is Eric Swalwell, as is Adam Schiff. I mean, these are basically corrupt fools.
Yeah. And
they're bleating about the fact that a car might have, on the floor in the back seat, that the floor mat might have a little bit of dust on it, when Trump has taken the car away from the trajectory, the Thelma and Louise trajectory that it was on under Obama, Biden, and brought it back to the highway, going to the promised land for everybody, for the private sector.
Trump a speeding ticket for that. Speaking of speeding, Charles, we've raced through this introduction. We're about to make our way over to the First Amendment Forum, where I hope people will join us. I ran up a bill on this Washington, D.C. trip for sort of nothing, so I need sponsors to sponsor the show. If people are interested in the next segment, please become a sponsor on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We'll be right back. We've got a lot more stuff to get into. Charles, I've got some other things I want to ask you about here, and we're going to continue talking about Signalgate. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. Thanks for watching.